So, hello everyone. Let me just double check that we are indeed live. Normally there's a tiny bit of a delay, so let me just check here. And we are live. Awesome. So, thanks everyone for coming. I'm here today in the studio of Vue.js Vienna with Gerard. Hey, Gerard.
Hello everyone.
Nice. You'll hear more from him afterwards. He'll be giving a talk about some fun stuff, PWA and GraphQL and Vue and Amplify, I think it's called. AWS
Yes, Amplify. Yes.
Amplify, sorry. Nice. Good. For those of you who just dropped by, saw there was something on Robert's live stream. This is a live stream for a Vue.js Vienna meetup, which is a get-together to watch a talk or two and socialize. Obviously, in these COVID times, we are not physically present. Hopefully, that will happen again soon. But we're trying to make the most of it by offering some information, education, entertainment online. If you stumbled across this, we are on meetup.com. Feel free to go over there and just Google or just put in the search bar Vue.js Vienna and become a member of our group. And otherwise, I'm sure most of those 12 people that are already watching already know what this is about and have come here from us spreading the word or from seeing the event listed in our meetup group. So without further ado, just a couple of quick words to our great sponsor, Epcon. They are supporting my time spent on the meetups. They're also paying for this tool that we're using to stream out to you live right now. They would normally give you free pizza or drinks if you were at our physical location. Alas, unfortunately, not this time. It's an IT services company. They're hiring also in COVID times for front-end developers, back-end developers, business analysts, project managers, and some other roles like software testing, etc. Front-end stack is mostly Angular and Vue, but we have more and more Vue project. No, I said Angular and Vue, mostly Angular and React, but we have more and more Vue projects as well. So that could be interesting. On the back end, we're Java-centric, also some MS, Microsoft stuff. But feel free to have a look, or if you know of someone that are looking for a job in tech in Austria or around, or would like to relocate to Vienna, then it could be worth a look. There's a conference that we supported or helped spread the word about last year. They're having, or I think it was maybe earlier this year, they're having another conference next year. It's virtual this time. So feel free to check that out. The link is sec4dev.io. So that's a shout out to them. As you might know, I also organized two other meetups, Free Code Camp Vienna, that just turned 5 years now in November. You can go and watch the recordings of our celebration meetup event that was last week. It was great fun with Quincy Larson, the founder, also with us, and he gave a short talk about Free Code Camp. And Vienna Go is a Golang meetup here in Vienna, are also online, so you can go to meetup.com and have a look if you're interested in that kind of stuff. The program for today is this introduction that we're doing now, and then Gerard will give his talk about Amplify and not Amplify. And I'm sure he'll tell us more about why you should why you should try that out and what fun stuff you can make with it. So I'll leave it to him. Afterwards, we'll open for both questions from the chat for his talk, but also questions in general. So if you have something about Vue, beginner friendly or advanced, maybe not too advanced, but we'll give it a crack if you have something. Feel free to prepare those. The plan is to have questions for the talk after the talk, so please save them up. If you do post them during the talk, I'll do my best to highlight them when the talk is finished so Gerard can see them and address them. Then we're almost there. So if you've been to one of my meetups before, you know that I try my best. So since we, again, cannot give you physical pizza and drinks, we're giving you virtual ones for now. So at home, get your favorite beverage or snack, get ready, bring the popcorn, and I'm sure Gerald will entertain us for the next 45 minutes plus minus. I'm really excited for this talk. So without further ado, the stage is yours, Gerard.
All right. All right. Okay, so in this talk, I want to cover what I title "Not a Basic Offline First App Using GraphQL and Amplify DataStore." I mean, that's a long title, isn't it? So I'm gonna try to cover offline first, then I'm going to move into progressive web apps. There will be a little bit of GraphQL, and around all of this, I will be talking as well about Amplify Data Store. So there's plenty for this talk. So let's get to it. And usually, what I like to do to start is cover my name. I'm originally from Barcelona, so this is probably not so easy to pronounce. My name sounds like this: Gerard Sans. So that's one way of saying it. Otherwise, you can use my English name, which is Gerard Sans, which is also fine. I'm a developer advocate for AWS, and you can see some pictures here. This is more or less my character, so don't expect anything too serious. I'm an international speaker, and I counted all of the public talks that I've done, and this is the 155. And before the pandemic, I was able to travel a little bit. So this is, of course, without online events. But now with online events, I'm still going to show this just to show where I have been. All right. Well, time to go into the topic. And what I want for you to do is ask yourself, what is offline first? And I want you to think about it, because as a developer, as a web developer, this is probably not something that you do a lot. And one of the first things that probably comes to mind when you are thinking about offline is the dinosaur, isn't it? So this is a dinosaur game that you can play in Chrome, and if you press the space bar, it will appear, and you will be able to jump these flying cactuses. And I mean, this is fun and all good, but probably that's not the experience that you want for your users when using your app. So let's see how we can improve this. The first thing when we are looking at offline first for web is, of course, we want to avoid the dinosaurs. So we want to be offline ready. And probably there's few approaches that you can take to do this. And probably one of them is just to show some kind of a message like, okay, the application is now offline, some kind of a placeholder. But I think we can do better than that. The next thing that I would recommend you when you are dealing with an offline first application is try to keep a great user experience. And this will be shown today with different examples. And probably if you are not familiar with offline first, these examples will be really interesting for you. One thing that we are going to try to do is bring what I call native-like features into your web app. And this will feel more like native applications that you can use in your Android or iOS phones. And we will see how we can do that. And we are going to use progressive web apps to achieve that. Another thing that you may be wondering, if you get your application working offline, is that how are you going to manage user data? I mean, you want to be able to store when the user is interacting with your app. Maybe it's going to create some information. You want to keep it. So that's also a requirement. You need some kind of a reliable storage so you can do two things. One thing is keep the information on device, and also synchronize the information when you go back online. So there's few things that are unique to offline first, and that's why I wanted to start with this. So we have covered the first section, so pat in the back, and we are good to go. I will also be using these cats pictures just to do like a mental break and keep the talk lighthearted. Okay, so next topic I want to talk about is progressive web apps, or PWAs. And we will be covering some of the requirements. So if you are about to use a PWA, you will have to follow these requirements. And the first one is using HTTPS. And HTTPS is a secure transport layer that will be used in order to both host your application when you deploy it, and also to make sure that the information that it's being transferred, the user data, will be secure. And this is important, as we will see later. It will be also avoiding someone messing with the application on the device. So this is a little bit, an important point to make. The next thing that I want to cover is the service worker. And the service worker will allow you to run your app while offline. So this is an important key piece for PWAs. I'm going to show how it works, so that will be something interesting to follow. And the next thing will be the web app manifest. And here I'm showing different devices. Maybe it's not so clear when we are talking about web apps, but you need to think more about different operative systems and devices. Mostly devices that are not familiar with web development, more like native apps, and also using your app in a new environment like a desktop app. I also show tablets here, but you can get the feeling of all these new spectrum of devices that you will be able to use. So these are a few of the core requirements, and we are going to be looking at these separately. So how the service worker will help you while you are offline. So let me try to explain this with this diagram. And I just want you to notice that the service worker sits between the browser, which is around index.html page as a single page application, and the network where you host your app. So we are offline, and let's say that you refresh the application on your device. That will make the request for the different assets, and we can see there's the app using JavaScript. There's also like some images, and I'm using this logo asset. So this request will go through the service worker, and because it's offline, it will be doing something really smart, which is using the cache and storing these assets on the local cache in the device. If it finds that there's a match on these assets, it will then send those to the browser. So actually, what will happen is for the browser, it will actually behave as if it was online. And just notice that we are still offline. So that's pretty awesome. These are usually the reactions from web developers, and I just wanted to show this as, of course, if you haven't used this technology before, that will be a little bit surprising for you, that you can use a service worker and just get that offline behavior out of the box. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about AWS Amplify now. And the first thing that I want to cover is what we call Fullstack Serverless. And if you haven't heard about serverless, this is mostly a new way of building applications in the cloud. And of course, if you have no previous experience in the cloud, maybe you won't be that much interested. But with Fullstack Serverless, these are a new set of tools and approaches that will help you transition from front end to back end, and also from back end, if you have a previous back end experience, to front end. And we will see how AWS Amplify helps you do that. Here we can see all of the different platforms that Amplify supports. So you can see that there's support for web platforms. There's also support for native. We have Android, we have iOS. There's also recent support for Flutter and all of the frameworks that you know in front end. Another thing that I want to cover is what pieces make up AWS Amplify, and these are pieces that they can also work independently. So one of them is a set of libraries that we call Amplify Framework that will give you all the support on these different platforms and also help you build these full stack serverless apps. On the developer tools, you will have support to create web services, these cloud services that will give the base for your architecture and also help you along the way. So we will see also what developer tools you have available for that. There's also access to cloud services, and in this case, these are AWS cloud services. And also in the middle, connecting all of these different pieces, it will be the Amplify CLI. And this will be very familiar to you, and it will be doing a similar role as you are using today with the Vue CLI. So let's look a little bit into the Amplify framework. These are a set of libraries that are open source, so you can also contribute on the different projects. There's what we call categories based, and this will be targeting different features that you can use as a building blocks for your apps. We also say that Amplify framework is opinionated, and the way I see this is that the Amplify core team has decided different settings that will make it much easier for you to get you started. Of course, sometimes if you are more experienced using AWS services, you may have different opinions. So you need to take that into account. One thing to take note here is that there's escape hatches, so you can always deviate from that initial setup that was decided by the Amplify core team. Another thing that I want to show you is how the Amplify CLI development looks like. So when you are starting a new project, you will be running this command, which is amplify init. And once you have that done, you will move into adding a category. And this is very similar to how the Vue CLI works when you want to add new features. So I will look into the categories available later on, but this is how you would do it. That will show some prompts, and you will go through some series of questions just to customize what architecture you want for that specific category. And the next step will be to run Amplify Push. When we run Amplify Push, it will create and provision the AWS services that you have selected and will make all of the configuration so you can start working. In any case, if you want to change anything later on, you can run Amplify Update and the name of the category that you want to change, and that will show you like the whole cycle. When we look at other tools that you can use, we should also cover Amplify Console, which is a way to auto-deploy every time that you do a commit. And that will be very beneficial when you are working in large teams. So every time that you do a commit, you can redeploy the application. This will give you a seamless CD/CI, and of course, it comes packed with extra features, so you can deploy globally. You can use custom domains if you want, or if you use in your environment different branches, it can also use a branch to do that. And of course, it can be secure and at all times is atomic. So that means that if something fails along the way, it will just stop the deployment. So you can fix the error and only deploy when it's working. The other thing that I want to point here is all the different repositories that are supported. So you can use GitHub if you do use that, or Bitbucket, GitLab, and Code Commit. There's also an option to deploy manually. So you can also use folder, or maybe if you zip the content of your app, you can also use that. So you can see that there's a whole spectrum of tools that you can use and have available. I also want to point to the different categories that you have. And here we have authorization, we have API supporting GraphQL and REST. There's also chatbots, analytics, extended reality, of course, storage, Lambda functions, hosting, and notifications. If you are interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning, there's also predictions, and predictions cover all of these features. So you can translate, you can also use text-to-speech or the opposite, and also do image recognitions. All right, so this is kind of an overview of all of the services that are available. If you cannot see a service, there's always a way of implementing it as a function. So that's also for the people that has more AWS service experience. So if you cannot see the service that you would like to use, you can always use a Lambda function to extend that and use that service that you want. Okay, so here in this talk, I'm going to cover just authorization and API with GraphQL. So this is just like an introductory talk. All right, so probably that will be your reaction. Don't get too scared. We are going to go just over a few of the features, so you don't need to, be too scared about it. I want to start talking about the application that I'm going to make offline first, and this is going to be a single room real-time chat application that I call Chatty. And you can build the application. I mean, we are not going to focus so much on how to build the application because we want to make sure that it's PWA. So if you want to look into how I build the application, you can follow this tutorial. This is how it looks. You can see here there's a place to write a message, and that will be shared with any of the users that have login to this single chat room. And there's also an option to remove the messages, just to show you a few of the features of Amplify, and in this case, it will be Amplify DataStore. Okay, so before I go into some more details, I want to show you how the architecture looks like for this type of app. And we are, again, talking about Fullstack Serverless. So we can see all of the AWS services that will be involved. And Amplify will help you just create this design and provision all of these services and do the initial setup for you. Using the Amplify CLI. So let's see an overview of this. One of them will be the hosting, and this will be using AWS Amplify console. So it will host all of the assets and also our JavaScript. We will also set up the authentication using Amazon Cognito. And I'll show you a little bit of how that would look like. And probably the most interesting is the setup of the GraphQL API. And in this case, we are going to use AWS AppSync and Amazon DynamoDB as a data source. All right. So how many commands we will use to create that design, that architecture that I show you? We are going to use just these commands. So the first one will be Amplify init. So that's just to initialize your project. In this case, your Vue app. And here we are going to add authorization. So that's going to just take this command. After that, we are going to add the GraphQL API, and that will involve Amplify add API. And once we created these resources in our project, we are going to create and provision the services that I show you on that diagram on the cloud. And to do that, I'm going to run Amplify push. So as you see, you only need to use these 4 commands to create that Fullstack Serverless architecture. And that will support our real-time chat. Okay, so the first step that you will have to go through is defining your GraphQL schema. And this looks pretty much like the shape of a JavaScript object. there's few differences here. The first one is this add model. This is a GraphQL directive, and this will create some, will automate some of the resources that we will need to support this type on the server side. So it will create the resolvers for this type and also the data tables on DynamoDB. If we look at the fields, we can see that these fields are using some type, so that will be using this colon notation, and also we can see that there are some exclamation points. So these exclamation points point you to mandatory fields, and maybe just for the last one, that is an optional one. So we don't need that. Of course, we are going to use all of them as we want to show a timeline for our chat room. So we have an ID that will identify the message, a user, which will be any of the users that log in our chat room, the actual message, which is a string, and then a timestamp to show in the timeline so we can sort the messages. Okay, so how is Amplify DataStore playing part here in this architecture? Well, Amplify DataStore allows us to work both offline and online. And probably the most interesting thing is that it will provide this API using models that we auto-generate from the GraphQL schema, and that will be using IndexedDB on our browser. Also, I want to mention that because it also supports mobile, we can use SQLite in that case. So that will store the messages on the device, depending if it's a browser or if it's a mobile phone. And then probably the most interesting bit is when we go online, we are going to be using a sync engine that will create those local entries, but now in our data source. So in order to do that, we're going to use GraphQL subscriptions, which will allow us to use WebSockets to do that synchronization. And here, I'm just pointing to different data sources. We are going to use DynamoDB by default, but you can also use AWS Lambda or Elasticsearch. So this is the whole architecture and how Amplify DataStore will allow us to work both offline and online and do the synchronization bit, which is essential for offline first. And just to show you a couple of code snippets, this is a code snippet to create a message. And you will see that in order to do that, we need to use a model that's actually matching the type that I showed you earlier. And this is how it looks. So it's using a promise. So we can execute this data store safe. It will create the message locally in our IndexedDB store. And it will use the information that we pass in this new chatty initialization object. If we want to do a query, we will be using a new object. In this case, is a predicate, and we are going to select all of the data. We can also introduce filters, so that's something that you can check in our documentation. So that's pretty much it. Now we covered how the application looks like before we go into a progressive web app. So we are ready to make it PWA. So let's look at the steps in order to do that. When we are using the PWA Vue CLI plugin, we are going to run Vue at Vue/PWA. And that plugin is going to do most of the work for you, so you don't have to do these steps, the following steps, manually. and it's pretty awesome. So one of the things that we'll be doing, of course, we have talked about the service worker and the web app manifest. So that's going to be mainly the configuration for these two pieces. So one thing that was updated when I ran the command was the main GS file, adding an import that will register the service worker. And there's also the registration of the service worker file. So once we have done that, we can run yarn build, so we can release that code. And we can see that there's some new resources that the build has created. We can see that there's some CSS, some icons. These icons are going to cover for these different devices that our PWA targets. We can see Android. There's also support for iOS, Microsoft platform. And we can also see this version. Of course, this version will be a hash. I'm just using version as a placeholder, so you can imagine there's an ID that will run for every different build, will be a different version, and that will help us to update our app with new resources and new assets. The next thing I want to point you is the web app manifest, which is these two files. One is a configuration file, and the other keeps the configuration for the pre-catch assets. And we are going to look that in a little bit more detail. There's also the actual service worker, which is the service worker.js. And what I'm going to show you now is some command, so you don't have to deploy every time that you do a build. So of course, the next thing that you would do is deploy this new build into the cloud, and we will use AWS Amplify console to do that. But in order to test these changes locally, you can also run this simple HTTP server using Python, and that will execute the code in the this folder. So that will save you some time, so you don't need to release on every single change. This is just a tip for you to develop faster. What happened when I did this for my chatty app is that there was a mistake. And this is because the default setting will take all of the assets in the this folder, and anything that we place on the public folder for our app, will add it as a pre-catch asset. But if you have an external asset, like in this case is the logo, it won't cover that. So in order to add customization of that default behavior, I had to introduce some changes. And let me show you what I had to do. So I had to change the build from the Vue config file. And one of the things is I had to include the manifest. So you can do that with this line here. This is a new file that you can take from the build that we did just before. And here I'm going to change the settings for the PWA plugin. This is on the root folder, so you can change that or create this file if you don't have it at the moment. And here you can see some of the specifications for the web app manifest. And most of it is changing how the user experience will change. So there's a name for the app that will be displayed when the app is loading. There's also the theme color, the background color, so that all of these settings will change how the application will behave. And this is for you to go into the different devices and check what's the experience that you are after. I'm showing some of them. So this is some features from Microsoft devices. There's some from iOS, so you can get an idea. The way the PWA CLI plugin works is together with the Workbox. So Workbox is a library that will allow you to set up the offline behavior in using some configuration parameters. And To do this custom configuration, we need to use inject manifest, and that will be providing the service worker manually. We are going to use the default service worker as a base, but that's how you can also introduce a complete service worker built from scratch. So this is the implementation of the service worker, and this is just changing the prefix from the cache so we can identify it on the device, and we are going to use Amplify DataStore. And any entry that goes into the cache will be prefixed with this text. For this setting, I'm using, this is kind of a generic approach. So whenever I release a new version of the service worker, I'm not going to wait for the user to close the different instances. So I'm just going to indicate the browser to just install the new version in all of the instances, even if they are running. And the other thing is that I'm not going to wait until the user closes the browser and reopens the browser to use the new version of the service worker. So I'm going to call this client's claim, and both together makes an update the easiest for you. You can also change this. If you go to Workbox documentation, you can see if you want to change that experience. The fix that I wanted to do, which was to change how the logo was being pre-catch, is by adding this new entry on the catch files. By default, when you do the initial build of the Vue CLI for PWA, it will include anything that is on the dist folder. So I'm going to add this URL, and this is an external resource. If you wanted to just copy this asset and put it on the public folder, that's also another option. But this approach will also help you when you are using, for example, Google Fonts or some other external asset that you cannot copy into the local project. So that will make these catch files be pre-catch, and that will be used when you install the service worker for the first time. Okay, so this was quite a journey. We still have a few more minutes, so I'm gonna go through an overview, and then if we have a little bit of time, I want to do also a demo. So let's look at what we have achieved. Now we have Chatty, and this is now a PWA. So we can celebrate, and that means that we support web, of course. I mean, this is a single page application. It will work on web very well, but now it also works for mobile and desktop. And we are going to use the web app manifest to change that user experience. And this involves, different icons, different images, different themes and colors. So when the user opens the app, it's exactly how you envision it. Let's look at how it looks for Android and iOS. So when you install, there's an option when you are running your PWA, which is add to home screen. And this is how it will look in Android on the left and iOS on the right. It will just look as if it's a native application, and then you can run it in whole screen. So that will give you a different feeling. And these are how they look when you install them. So there's not much information for the user to think that this is a regular web app. And of course, we have changed it in a way that it can also work offline. So in the eyes of the user, this will be very much like a native-like application, which is the whole purpose. Still, we are not ready. So I'm going to say that we are 99 offline ready. And we have achieved few things. So now, if we try to do a reload offline, it will survive it. So you will be able to use the application even if the user reloads. We won't see the dinosaur. We can also store the messages while offline, which is probably something that you haven't done before. And probably the most interesting is that automatically, when the application goes online, it will share and synchronize for you. And this is thanks to Amplify DataStore, that will be using GraphQL subscriptions to do that using WebSockets. This is all sounds like magic, but if you are familiar with GraphQL, this is like a common feature, which is a nice addition to this offline ready for this app. One thing that we haven't covered is, okay, so we are using the app, but if we go offline, we are not showing that information to the user. So imagine if you are using the chat app and for some reason you go in a place that there's no network. It could be the underground, it could be a room that has no access to Wi-Fi, and the user won't receive any information around that. So the user may think like the application is not working properly, but actually it's the network that is not working properly. So let's see how we can improve that. In order to improve the user experience, we are going to use a flag, and it's going to be a property which I called offline, and I'm going to use that to show a message. And that will be a way of doing it. You can also change the style. So you change the styles of the application. We are going to use the app, which is part of the AWS Amplify library. And I'm going to initialize it with undefined as a good practice. So once I create my application, I'm going to set this app listener, which are going to be listening to data store events. And I'm going to look into the network status, which has active property that I can use so I know when the application is online or offline. So that will be enough for me to change the UI. And this is how it looks. So if for any reason the application go offline, we will have not only the message, you are offline, your messages will be shared once you are connected, but I also change the input so the user at any moment has control of how they want to keep using the app. So I think that's pretty much it. That's a wrap up for the different features. So on the left, we have web, single page applications, and on the right, we have progressive web apps. So one thing that you may have noticed is that PWAs will be faster as we can pre-catch some assets. Of course, we can work offline with PWAs. There's also the option for full screen apps, which can be interesting to run on operative systems and also mobile. There's also this support for different operative systems, and I was mentioning mobile and desktop, and also access to these native-like features. Of course, these are not all available when we are using a web single-page application. So I'm going to rate PWAs a little bit better. So that's pretty much it. That's all the story. I hope I cover all the different aspects. So this is the slide to think about all the possibilities that you have in your hands. And I think I have time for a little demo. So I'm going to switch to another screen. And as you can see here, I have two instances. This is a Chrome instance and a Firefox instance. I log in with different users, Sans and Robot. And I'm going to just refresh. So I got no stale connections, etc. And I'm going to just share a message. And just for good measure, I'm going to open this so we can see all of the requests that are going through. And we are online. I'm just going to show you how the real time works. So I'm just going to send this. So you see that I send the message from Sans. This is my account. I can see the timestamp, and I can also see that for the robot, this appears on the other side. Now, this is almost to mimic what you can see in some of the applications today. So here I want to check how that looked. So we can see that we have done a request using a GraphQL API. And if we look at how the request was done, I want to see if I can see the actual request. So we can see the query here. This is a mutation. If you are familiar with GraphQL, this is how you can create new entries. And we can also see the information for the new message. So this is how I shared that, and this is also using real time, so it can show for all of the clients, not only in this case it's just 2 clients, but you could have 1,000 clients, it will be the same. And here I'm going to do another thing. So instead of using the Firefox instance, I'm going to use my mobile, which I installed because it's a PWA. So I have it on my phone. And I'm going to say something. And I can use also emojis, which is awesome. Let me use very quickly. So now you can see that I've created the message on my phone, and I got it synchronized with the different browsers. So you can see the real time here operating. The next thing that I want to show you is how it works offline. So let me go offline on the left browser. So I'm going to do that on my Firefox. So I go offline, and here I can see that the UI has changed. What I'm going to do now is, this is a little bit dangerous, so I'm going to create a message, which will be a sequence. Okay, this is number 1. I can see here is my message, and I'm going to follow the sequence on the other client. So that's second message. Now I'm going to continue with the next message, and this is offline, so this is now stored on the browser. So I'm gonna look at that information here. So this is a storage, IndexedDB, and here I can see that data. So here I can see all of the messages. So far we have 3 messages on the online version, and on the offline version we have 4 messages, which are the ones here. And this is the last one. So everything is working as expected. One thing that I want to do now is I want to go online. Let's do that quickly. And the moment I go online, I can see one thing, and is that all of the messages have been synchronized. So even when I was offline, the app has been able to put them together and mash them up. And this may seem like magic, but what is happening is because we are sharing the same timeline, which is the timestamp, the application is able to put them in the right order. So let's see now that we have seen this and we have seen how this is working offline, let me do the bits that are a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to do the next thing is I'm going to go offline, and I'm going to refresh, which I should get the dinosaur at this point. But I can see that the application survives reload offline. So let's see how that happens. And the way it happens is using the cache. So let's look at the cache very quickly. And we can see the prefix here. This is all of the assets. So we are getting all of the JavaScript, there's CSS, there's images. But one thing that I fixed is I added the SVG. So we can see that the Amplify logo here, it's also in the cache. So we have all of these assets pre-cache. The other thing that I want to quickly show you is how the service worker is up and running. And finally, the web app manifest, which is the configuration for the theme, the background color, and some icons. These icons will be shown when you install the app on mobile or desktop. So I think that's pretty much it. So I cover quite a lot of information. If you want to check all of these resources, I would say give it a try. And these are some URLs that you can use in order to do that. This is the solution, the whole application as it was shown in the demo. And there's also like a step-by-step workshop. So that will be to create the Chatty app. So that's all. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Great, thanks a lot, Jared. That was a great talk.
Thank you.
Or Gerard, how should I pronounce it? I sort of learned half an hour ago.
It's impossible. I mean, not even my Spanish friends can pronounce it because it's Gerard Sans. It's there's some sounds they are particular to Catalan.
Yeah.
So this sound is difficult. The
Gerard.
Gerard.
I need to practice.
But yeah, it's interesting. If you want to try, you can learn like some new sounds.
Yeah, sure. Gerard. The
Nice.
G was hard, you said. Yeah.
Thank you. For trying.
Any questions? Please put them in the chat. When we went through the talk, there was only one, but it was corrected by Jack, I think. He missed that. What was the @model annotation?
Sure. I can cover it.
Jack said it was custom attributes on model. Maybe he was right.
Yeah. So @model, the way it works. So this is a GraphQL directive, and you can extend the GraphQL DSL to add new features, and this is part of the GraphQL spec. And the way the Amplify team has used this extension is to implement what we call transforms. So this @model will create the resolvers to do like CRUD operations and also to apply filters. And we'll also create a data table that will support your type. So it's kind of doing quite a lot of work, so it can support that feature. What I can show you maybe very quickly, let me share my screen just for a moment. So here, I didn't show this before, but there's, oops. So there's the console. So these are different screens that I can access from my AWS account, and this is where my app lives. So this is where my live production URL comes from, and also the different steps to deploy. But one thing that I also have access to is, I added 2 categories. One was authentication, the other was API. So this is where my GraphQL API lives. And then if I use this, I will be able to open another screen. And this is where my GraphQL schema lives on the server side. So you can see that there's some extra fields that have been added, and this is because we use the @model. And not only this, but if you look down, there's quite a lot of things going on, and these are going to support me in different ways. But mainly what it will do is give me some queries, and also it will implement the resolvers for me. So these queries, and it will also implement mutations. I mean, this is for the people that is more experienced in GraphQL. So these are created for me. So I can query, I can create, update, and delete. And the other thing that we'll do is we'll create the link with my data. And basically behind my API, there's only a table. So this is this Chatty table. And that was also created for me. So I can show you some of the messages, how they look. So I actually have a document-based database that I can go through, and this will be giving me a data source, so I can see some of the messages and what were the user, what were the ID. There's also some information related to the synchronization, so I can see the version and a timestamp, so that will allow me to do the synchronization on the client. But this, of course, this is going a little bit more into detail, but that all comes from that ad model that you were mentioning in your question.
Cool. Yeah, Gregor was already commenting. I see dgraph also uses them. Cool feature. I really like GraphQL, especially schema design. And Gregor was following up with a hint to my T-shirt. To be honest, I never had an Atari, so you're probably right. I'm using the wrong T-shirt, but I just love geeky T-shirts. There was a period where I could get them from there you go.
It's a screaming, and also yours. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to be able. I mean, I'm not gonna use this T-shirt that much, so it's good for for a talk.
Yes, Santa is coming. What are the best? So Rafael Cordones is saying, what are the best practices to manage different environments, development, staging, and production?
Well, AWS Amplify supports environments, and the way you use them, I mean, that will be depending how you use these environments on your own. And of course, there are different approaches. So it depends how you are doing it now. But actually, it doesn't matter which approach you use. It's already supported. So you need to think more about if you are going to use a branch base driven development. What you would do is, it just depends how you manage different releases. So you can keep one of the branches going forever, or maybe you have maybe 6 months LTS for that branch, and that means that when you do changes, you also want to apply the changes in any LTS branches that are live at this time. So then you have that different release approach using different branches. If you want to use like a more classical approach where you have a master, and that's coming from depth, and then you use like a waterfall approach, so it's always using master, and then you have staging, Q&A, and then production, then you use that approach instead. But it just depends how you really want to do it, and as long as the team is in the same page, it will work just fine with Amplify.
Perfect. Then we have a question from Roland Schutz. Hey, Roland. How would you deliver a package's iOS app to support push notifications?
Okay, so this is a specific feature that PWA can give you access. I'm not that familiar with, because there's for every feature that it's more like mobile. Looking at these native-like features, you need to really look into that specific feature, and then what's the support across the board. If you want to use a feature like that, you need to make sure that where is your PWA going to be used? So imagine you have I don't know, a bank corporation, and it's going to use the PWA not only on mobile but also on desktop. So you need to make sure that it's not critical, because otherwise, when the user is using that PWA in different environments, maybe they will expect to have that feature there as well. So you need to be careful about providing a nice, across the board experience. If you are sure that if you have total control about what device is going to be used for your app, like maybe you are rolling out a tablet app and everyone is going to use that device, nothing else, and then you make sure that that feature works, for your use case, then it's completely fine. I don't have the specifics, so I'm not really the person to ask about a specific feature for iOS, but that's a matrix. You need to look at the support and then make sure that it makes sense for what you want to build. Okay, so this is a workaround for that. The thing is, the good news is that this feature matrix is getting better and better. And maybe a year or 2 years ago, iOS was really behind. But once it got support for service worker, it has opened a new like set of capabilities that of course it depends. Maybe you will never have iOS users, so that's maybe not applicable to your PWA. But yeah, you have access to some workarounds, so that would be great. I mean, of course this can get tricky because you are looking at iOS, but PWAs work also for desktop, so you need to be careful just introducing a feature that it's only for one specific device, because PWA allows you to install that in different platforms. So just make sure that you give like a nice alternative, or the user will be missing that feature if it's in the center of your app.
Cool. We're still open for more questions if there are any. I see Rafael has connected with Gregor in the chat. That's nice. And yeah, I agree. After the lockdown or these times are over, it would be nice to meet again in person.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
It's nice that people are meeting each other in the chat. That's nice.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, still today we are not really sure when that will be. Let's hope it's soon.
Yeah, for sure. You're located in the UK, no? How's it going over there?
Yes, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, the weather, we are going through like some low temperatures, not as low as you mentioned me before.
Yeah, we had 0 degrees in the morning here. I'm guessing we're gonna reach minus in the night.
Over here is maybe 8 degrees. I mean, it's cold, but it's not 0 degrees. No, we are not in that range. So hopefully it will stay like that
for a little while longer. Roland is chiming in again, but I think you already addressed it. He's just saying that he was asking specifically for iOS because it has to be support. But I think still that you've kind of answered the question. And
that's
if
true.
you only have one platform to support, of course, you don't have to think about the support being only for one device or platform. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Also, any other questions or comments from the chat? We are going to stay around for a couple of more minutes at least. It's up to you if you want to have it more interactive, if you would like us to talk more other than the weather, though I'm sure we can come up with some nice subjects, being Christmas around the corner and those kind of things. Feel free to use the time now to ask any more questions for Gerard, or I'm doing my best.
Or, no, it's impossible. I mean, not even my friends from from all life can pronounce it. I mean, I just gave up. But you can call me as long as it's correct, because different languages also have different pronunciation. So it's also Gerard. For French, it's Gerard. There's also Gerhard in German. So I mean, you can call me any name as long as it's my name in your language. It's all good. You speak German, isn't it? Or what languages?
I speak a bit. My native is Norwegian, but my German is sowieso. Es könnte besser sein, aber es geht schon. Yes.
I lived in Germany. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, yeah. How is your German?
Oh, my German is really bad at this point.
Nice.
I haven't practiced, but I can. The good thing is I lived in Germany for a year, so I still have my kind of German somewhere in the back of my head. So I can, when I met some German people, I can answer in English, but somehow I can still speak. I can do like some minor, kind of hi, I'm Gerard, I'm from Barcelona, blah blah. But I've lost a lot of the German, and now what I can do is I can listen to German, and I'm able to follow the conversation in English, for example, and keep the other person is speaking in German, which is kind of strange, but I have that. So I'm missing maybe 40%, but I still have like something to run.
Even for me, sometimes I do that. I'm like, if we start the English conversation, I'm like, you saying in German, you can say it in German, and I will just answer in English if it's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good like in the middle kind of thing.
Compromise. Yeah, that's good. Cool. Then I think we will slowly fade out. I'll just put up my screen for now. You can still ask questions in the chat if you have any, or if you have any comments. On that note, that's a nice segue to this slide here. You can follow us. So we are on Twitter, Vue.js Vienna, meetup.com. Again, as I said in the beginning, if you haven't been to a meetup like this before, go there and then you can sign up and you get notifications for the upcoming ones. And then I'd like to plug this time VueLand, which is the Vue Discord server. So if you do have any questions that after we're finished or later tonight or tomorrow, you're like, now I have a question, you can go to VueLand, and there's tons of people there in the thousands of members. There's at least 10,000 of members, if not 100,000 plus now, I'm sure, though not everyone will be there at one time. But it's a good place to ask your questions about Vue.js. I'm logged in there most of the days in business hours, so you can find me there as well. I should be easy to find. I'm listed as moderator on the top. So that's a really nice community. If you haven't been there before, make sure to go to vue.land. And if you don't already have a Discord account, it's a good time to start. Cool. A colleague of mine, Georgios Kontak. No, I'm going to try, but I'm going to mispronounce your surname. Kontokotsios. I should have known it by now. He's saying, hey, it was nice and he had a great time. That's great to hear.
Cool.
On that note, we also had a similar comment earlier, but now I'm not going to find it. Let's see. No. Good. But anyways, I also think it was really nice. It was a nice interactive experience with you, Gerard, and it was really a fun talk. I loved your kittens and the straightforward instructions. Yeah, it was nice. Good.
Awesome.
And we're similar time zones, no? So you're also having an evening to look forward to, or do you still have to get back to developer advocate work?
No. This is the end of the day for me.
Good.
It's now 6 in the afternoon, so it's not so late, and it was nice. It was nice to join you for a little time. Yeah.
Good. Cool. So without further ado, I think we'll say goodbye to the chat. Let's see if we can get some. If you would like and you want to say goodbye in the chat, I'll gladly highlight you as we outro. So I'm going to write in the chat, goodbye, everyone. This was fun. And now you can see my chat in a second. And if you would like your face, avatar, or name highlighted, feel free to say goodbye together. I'll put them on the screen and we'll be off air in a minute or so. So let me just close this here down. And good evening to everyone, good night to someone, or good evening to someone, good night to someone, good morning to someone, good afternoon to someone, etc. People from around the world, I think. Sylvester Pastre is saying, thanks for this, was very interesting. By the way, do you have a Vienna-based open job opportunity platform? I don't, but Vienna do. I don't know what you mean with open job opportunity platform. I would have to plug again abcont.com. Head over there. There are job listings for Vienna jobs. I'm not so good with German-based platforms, but there is Karriere.at, and just Google it. You'll find something. Also, feel free to just, as you see in my name listed, my Twitter handle is robaxosten. So just send me a tweet or DM, and I can help you with a specific help if there's something specific you're looking for. Cool. So then, Gerard, 1 second. yeah, but Gerard also tried to say bye, everyone, but he's not able to write here, unfortunately. So Gerard is saying goodbye. I'm saying goodbye. So with that, I think we say take care. It was nice. Have fun,
Okay.
everyone, and goodbye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.